Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sony Interactive Entertainment presents. Sorry, this isn't Crash.
uh,
It's the first thing I think of whenever I see that screen.
You know, I know that this is more of an Xbox thing, but when I saw that, I was expecting world premiere. Um,
the companies are probably really happy that people associate those things so easily, though, because that leads to extremely easy brand recognition.
yeah. Not that that's a good thing, mind you. But Anyway, Miles Morales. I think I have bought Spider-Man, the PS4 Spider-Man by this point. However, I still have not played it because I'm a I'm a fraud. I'm a fake Spider-Man fan. Um,
You should get around to it soon if you can.
yeah.
It's a great game.
But I know that this is like not quite an expansion pack, but like a.
It's kind of an expansion pack. It's too much for DLC, but it's not big enough to really feel like its own game at times.
It's kind of like one of those middle ground sort of standalone expansions. But lately, some companies have taken to releasing those as separate products so that you don't need to own the game attached to them. The earliest example of that I can think of is Infamous Festival of Blood, which was a fairly short-ish Infamous 2 quasi-sequel in a non-canon alternate universe that involved a vampire. And Cole McGrath getting vampire powers, I think, to go along with his electric vampire powers. um,
Interesting.
it was fun. Infamous 2 is a great game, and anyone who has a PS3 should probably play it. I say anyone who has a PS3 because despite Infamous being an ongoing, franchise that has a PS4 entry and another PS4 entry, which also qualifies as one of these standalone expansions. What was it, First Light? But they haven't re-released or remastered the first two games yet.
Really, they never made like a PS4 version of Infamous 1 or 2? That's surprising to me. Especially considering that like Infamous was for a long while actually like the superhero game. Like granted, it's not like Spider-Man, Superman, whatever, but it kind of scratched that itch for players for a
Yeah.
good bit.
It was
Um,
it was sort of in that early Batman Arkham Asylum, pre-Arkham Asylum era where there weren't very many good superhero games at all.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah,
so
because like during that time, I mean, I guess to just set the stage a little bit, Spider-Man 2 on GameCube, PS2 was an outlier. Most like N64 to early PS3 era superhero games were bad. They were not good at all. Reason for that being is that most developers treated them like normal licensed games. They did
yeah.
not care.
Well, most of them were licensed games because they were tied into movies or TV shows.
There
Yeah.
wasn't there, well, so was Spider-Man 2. There wasn't
Yeah.
as much
That's why I said it's an outlier.
there wasn't as much respect, I think, for the potential for superheroes outside of their own medium until the more recent times when a few smash hit video games, mostly on DC side, and a few smash hit movies, mostly on Marvel side, kind of woke the money men up to what they were missing. And here we are today.
I mean, I still think it's wild that it took Marvel this long. I mean, there were Spider-Man games coming out. Like Shattered Dimensions has its fans. I think even like some of the Amazing Spider-Man games have their fans. But all things considered, it was really only the Insomniac Spider-Man game for them to focus on making like a big budget game from one of their franchises. When did Spider-Man Insomniac even come out?
2019, I want to say.
It feels longer, which is one of the few instances of the pandemic making time feel longer than it actually did. So props for that, I guess.
It might have been 2018. I'm not entirely sure.
It is cool to see Miles Morales like in the spotlight recently too. Between this and Into the Spider-Verse.
I mean, Miles Morales has the benefit of being effectively the only good thing to come out of the Ultimate Universe. Yeah. When it comes to the Ultimate Universe, you've got like roughly 100 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man, and then you've got of the original Ultimate Spider-Man, I should say, and then you've got Ultimate Spider-Man with Miles Morales. That's about it. Nobody really cares about like Cell Wolverine or Racist Uncle Captain America or Reed Richards, but they somehow made him even more of a douchebag. Like nobody really cares about any of that. So they took Miles and they just kind of ran with him because he's actually like a really compelling character in his own right. Also, this is more for you guys. I still haven't seen Spider-Verse 2 yet, so no spoilers, please.
That means you in the comments as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not probably going to be reading the comments to this just in case, because, you know, somebody's going to have not read them, but still.
Yeah.
So, just as someone who's only seen the first Spider-Man game, are there any major gameplay differences between this one and that one?
Miles has more powers than Pete does. Pete's more gadget-based.
Interesting.
We'll get to the powers as they come up, but ultimately it still plays pretty much the same, so you're not missing out too much if you decide to skip this in favor of going right to 2, which just came out at the time of this video's release.
And that's PS5 exclusive.
Yes.
Well, until it's not.
Until it comes out on PC in 2 years.
I am kind of glad that the console companies are like letting their console exclusives go to PC eventually nowadays, though. Because,
I'm shocked that Sony is doing that.
Well, they have to do it.
They're
They have to
following the
do it.
money.
They have to do it because Xbox is doing it. You know?
I mean, but they haven't been doing it for years. Is the thing like?
Well,
Xbox
Microsoft themselves did not make a big deal of it until this current generation. As soon as Microsoft started making a big deal of it, it was like the reverse effect of what happened when Microsoft tried to undercut the used game market by making it extremely difficult to play games that you didn't buy new. You know, if the competition is doing something, you have to follow suit with an equivalent.
I mean, I guess it's just this isn't exactly a great comparison, but I'm reminded of like all the Wii knockoffs that came out in the late 2000s, where just because the Wii has a motion controller doesn't mean you need one, no matter how popular the Wii is.
Well, I mean, it did mean that consoles could develop motion controlled stuff, but the motion controlled stuff on those consoles was, you know, a side attraction, so you didn't really see all that much of it.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's not a great comparison, all things considered.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's just wild to me. I mean, I suppose, you know, they do get money out of it, but they do so by undercutting their own.
Well, not really.
Console, so.
Not really, because if they're the ones publishing the game or allowing for it to be published under certain conditions, they're still getting money per game sold, right? And that's most of what the console companies make money off of, per game sold. So in the previous game, our setup was we took down Wilson Fisk like a boss, and now there's a power vacuum, which is why there's so much goddamn stuff going on. This time, our setup is Miles did it bad, so we need to clean up Miles' mess as Miles. Haha.
I mean, that's a more Spider-Man kind of story when you think about it. Is
Well-
Spidey fucked up. Better fix it.
I mean, to a point, but I think, and this is a particular talking point nowadays with my adventures with Superman so fresh in everyone's mind, I think there has been a little too much emphasis in superhero media on things that can go wrong because of superheroes, which is just like, you know, it's an avenue worth exploring narratively, sure, but we've kind of overexplored it and forgotten the other side of superheroes that was actually pretty good, which is superheroes as, you know, moral examples.
Yeah.
With great power comes great responsibility. Big Blue Boy Scout. That kind of thing.
You know, honestly, this is actually a great example of where Marvel and DC traditionally differed. Because DC was traditionally more of the uplifting kind of side, like, oh, these are heroes you want to aspire to.
Yeah.
Versus
Marvel, which was always a little bit more on the edgy side, yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say edgy, but their characters are more, they pronounce the flaws in their characters more. Like,
Yeah.
they, like, Peter fucking up in some way, shape, or form is the backstory to half of his villains. And I'm not even really joking.
It's like it's like that thing in where Batman gets brought into Arkham Asylum for a mock trial by the Joker and all of his villains, where they all try to convince a captive prosecutor that Batman is actually at fault for everything they did, and except it kind of is the case with Spider-Man. And they should probably try that, and they should probably try that stunt on him because it would actually work. But
they probably should. Oh wait, did J. Jonah invite Santa Claus to his?
No, he's dressed as Santa Claus because it's Christmas time.
Okay.
I like this idea that JJ got so like fixated on his vendetta that he actually gets ousted from the Daily Bugle and has to do his own sort of influencer thing.
He was he was also elected mayor. I don't remember like what his platform was. Probably getting pictures of Spider-Man.
Was that an attempt to kind of copy the Lex Luthor as president thing?
I mean, probably to some extent.
Well, you know, to be fair, J. Jonah Jameson as mayor is a hell of a lot more believable than Lex Luthor as president, and not just because mayor is a more. It is. Because, you know, the only people who really have reason to dislike JJ are Spider-Man and people close to Spider-Man. You know, everyone else, they are in a position to kind of see his point at the very least and, you know, choose a side based on whatever they believe. Lex Luthor, you know, he's Lex Luthor. He actually gets up to super criminal stuff.
He literally has like a robot mech he drives around.
And I mean, Lex was always pretty good about, you know, staying out of legal trouble for a while. But
yeah,
you know.
it was like Lex and Doom both had like equally ridiculous reasons as for why they never got arrested for anything that they ever did. It's just like, oh, my diplomatic immunity covers me from tying 5 people up on top of a cell phone tower. Sure. I mean, I guess if you want to look at it that way, sure, I guess so.
Man, you gotta love the stylish combat in these games.
Yeah, these just definitely look a lot of fun just to play.
I am going to say, though, I think too many games incorporate Devil May Cry juggles into their goddamn action systems. And, you know, I'm not totally going to say it doesn't work in Spider-Man because it does give him more to do with his swinging around shit. But, you know, it's just something to think about. There are a lot of games that I could think of if I had them right in front of me, but not off the top of my head, where juggling is part of the mechanical system, but it doesn't really belong.
I don't play these kinds of games too often, so I'm struggling to think of some. just off the top of my head.
Well, the poster child for this in my brain is Legacy of Kain Defiance, which was basically DMC Light.
They made a DMC-styled Legacy of Kain game?
Yes, it was the last one they ever did. Well, apart from the canceled ones. And Nosgoth, I guess, but who counts Nosgoth?
When did that come out?
Defiance?
Yeah.
Oh, way back on the PS2. It was during that era where Devil May Cry and God of War were both really big. So you had a couple... I don't think the God of War clone fad had quite kicked in yet. So you had a couple of games like Castlevania Lament of Innocence, Legacy of Kain Defiance, that sort of aped the basic gameplay flow of Devil May Cry. Except they did it very poorly.
And in this instance, Rhino wins.
What?
This is like the first time Rhino's won ever.
How did that happen?
We don't know because we were fighting other people at the time.
He was off screen, so
They're trying to set up a weird thing where Miles has this rivalry with Rhino because of the whole thing in the first game.
they also needed to write a Peter out of the story, so that Miles.
Well,
could
no,
take
they're
center
writing him
stage.
out of the story in a different way.
I thought that they were doing that by having Rhino beat the crap out of him.
No.
Well, I mean, Spider-Man heals pretty fast, so he'll be fine. As long as he doesn't
guess.
die. As long as he doesn't die here, he'll be fine within a week. Tops. What the crud? What?
So
Why?
he has weird electricity powers.
Oh, so the My Adventures with Superman tangent is relevant. Great.
Unlocked Venom Punch. But not that Venom, though. That's next game.
Oh, yeah. It is good that they waited a bit to bring Venom in, at least.
Yeah, Venom, that's like if you literally want to talk about the issues that Spider-Man 3 had, part of it was trying to fit Venom. Like, people talk about how Spider-Man 3 has too many villains. The problem isn't that it has too many villains necessarily. I mean, I guess if you want it to be like super general, I mean, it kind of is. But the bigger problem is that it's trying to have multiple villains with Venom. Venom needs the first half of Venom's arc needs another villain for Spidey to fight against, so that you can see the Venom shit happening. But Venom otherwise takes up so much story real estate, for lack of a better word, that you need to, like, you can't do Venom and Sandman and it's Venom and Hobgoblin, actually. You can't do deeply emotional Peter stories for both of those characters. Like, you need to do one or the other. And honestly, if you want to make the perfect Venom movie, you have to split it up into two movies, where the first movie, he finds the suit and uses the suit to kick whoever that movie's villains is ass. And then in the second movie, you start to see the suit go too far, and then Venom's the final bad guy in that.
Yeah.
Like, it takes in order to have a satisfying conclusion to that arc, you need to have it go on long enough that you see Peter change.
I have some particular emotional attachment to the original Venom story, actually, because I experienced it in two old school forms. In what I think is the original comic, by which I mean it had old school art, and Venom had this weirdly human smile, rather than the pointy teeth he's known for now. That might have
flat teeth sounds weird.
Well, that's what he looked like in the comic I read.
Was it still during Secret Wars, or?
I wouldn't know. I was like 10.
I thought he just got the suit when he was in
was-
Secret Wars, and then
I can't remember.
It's been a long time, yeah.
I was like fucking 10. I had a box full of random ass comics from all sorts of places and times, you know? I had the old Superman wedding graphic novel with the white cover and everything. That was nice.
Do you still have it?
No. I don't have any of those comics, and it pisses me off. It's like, Dad, come on. Where did those comics go? At the very least, tell me you sold them and didn't throw them out.
You
Because
gotta
I'm
wonder how many people's parents threw out their baseball cards or Pokemon cards or old comics. when they would have been millionaires.
It's look like if you had kept hold of that, you could have at least gotten $1,000 out of it. You know, I could have. They're mine. But a lot of stuff that I had at my dad's house is not around anymore, and I have no idea where it went. My dad has moved like twice in that time, so I doubt he still has it. Ugh.
Oh, look, it's an energy company CEO. Are they the bad guy?
He's also a rich white capitalist guy.
Could they be evil?
Yeah, everyone called this guy out like the second he appeared on screen that he's bad.
Well, Roxxon is like in Marvel Universe is like evil because they're literally just an oil company. You don't need to do much more setup to establish that one.
I'm gonna say something slightly controversial, and it's mostly just that I think reaching for the easy cliche when it comes to something like an oil company isn't particularly good writing.
I agree. That's why it's usually better when these kinds of things, like having an oil company in the world of Marvel makes sense, and then just as world building kinds of things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that like they should be part of the story a lot of the time.
Well,
you know?
what I'm getting at more is that there are modes of writing where they will take a particularly unpopular thing from the real world, such as big corporate or a big oil baron, and they will just use that as a starting point for whatever their villain is. And I just don't like it as a starting point, I guess is what I want to say. Like if you're going to have a villain who owns an oil company, don't make them a villain because they own an oil company. Have them own an oil company because it helps them be a better villain. That might be too subtle a distinction to get into now with the part long over, but there it is.